50 sentences using the word ahead of.
He's always planning ahead of time.
The fast car sped ahead of the others.
The student finished his homework ahead of schedule.
She's the leader, always a step ahead of the group.
The restaurant is just ahead of us on the left.
The marathon runner was well ahead of the competition.
The team's performance was miles ahead of the others.
The new technology puts us far ahead of our competitors.
The library is located just ahead of the park.
The hiker explored the trail ahead of us.
The expert's knowledge is years ahead of the industry.
The bus pulled out ahead of the traffic.
The company's innovation is light years ahead of its rivals.
The early bird catches the worm, always ahead of the game.
The sun rises ahead of our morning jog.
The CEO is well ahead of the board's expectations.
The museum is located just ahead of the city square.
The dog ran ahead of its owner.
The visionary artist's work is decades ahead of its time.
The ship sailed ahead of the storm.
The technology company is ahead of the curve.
The competition is close, but we're still ahead. The movie theater is right ahead of the shopping mall.
The scout ventured ahead of the group to explore.
The talented musician is ahead of his peers.
The toddler crawled ahead of her parents.
The rocket soared ahead of the others.
The space probe is light years ahead of our previous missions. The garden is just ahead of the house.
The wise leader is well ahead of his followers.
The leader's vision is years ahead of our time.
The highway continues straight ahead of us.
The chef is ahead of the culinary trends.
The author's writing is light years ahead of the competition.
The river flows ahead of our hike.
The cyclist sped ahead of the pack.
The astronaut is ahead of the countdown.
The early riser is always ahead of the day.
The locomotive chugs ahead of the train.
The scientist's research is decades ahead of its field.
The ship sails ahead of the tide.
The inventor's idea is light years ahead of the existing technology.
The mountain peaks are just ahead of us.
The artist's work is generations ahead of traditional art.
The bus moves ahead of the cars in traffic.
The speaker is way ahead of the audience in knowledge.
The leader is ahead of the game in strategy.
The soccer player dashes ahead of the defense.
The car speeds ahead of the curve.
The astronaut steps ahead of his spacecraft.
If you want more, subscribe. See my other movies.